mask vendor once warned her, every mask changes someone's life. She didn't believe him until it was too late.
You ever have that moment where everything you believe to be true just crumbles in seconds? Where the people you trusted most reveal themselves as complete strangers? I had one, and it happened on a Halloween night, in a place I never should have been, at an elite masquerade ball where secrets were thicker than the fog rolling through Boston's historic streets. My name is Seon Kong, and I'm a woman who's always known exactly what she wanted. At 32 years old, I'd already built an impressive career in luxury marketing, closed six-figure deals, and lived in the best part of Cambridge. But there was one thing that kept slipping through my fingers: real power. Not the kind you get from a good salary. I wanted the kind that makes people tremble when you walk into a room. When I received the invitation to the New England Elite Society's annual masquerade ball, I knew immediately it was my shot. This event was legendary. Only 300 guests, all of them billionaires, CEOs, titans of industry. The kind of place where a smart, ambitious woman could change her entire life in a single night. But I had no idea my life was already about to be destroyed. I never knew my own plan had such a massive flaw. When you spend months preparing something, studying people's patterns, learning their secrets, planning exactly what to say, you believe you've got control. But the universe has got a cruel sense of humor, and that night I'd learn I wasn't even close to being in control. It all started with a man. No, wait. It all started with a mask. That Venetian gold mask I had specifically chosen because I knew it'd cover enough while still letting my beauty shine through. I bought it from a small boutique shop in Beacon Hill, from some eccentric vendor who whispered something strange when he wrapped it. Every mask that leaves here changes someone's life. The question is whether it's for better or worse. At the time, I thought it was just that weird boutique owner small talk. Now, looking back, I realize it was a warning I should have listened to. I had the perfect plan. Absolutely perfect. I'd researched for months about Daewon Choi, the 38-year-old CEO of Choi Ventures, one of the biggest tech companies on the East Coast. Billionaire at 35, son of Korean immigrants who'd built an empire from nothing. Single, or so the rumors went. Nobody knew much about his personal life because he kept things extremely private. But I'd found things. Small details that other people would miss. He attended this ball every year. He always stayed near the VIP section. He had a weakness for women who were too smart to fake it and too ambitious to quit. I was perfect for him. My plan was simple: seduce Daewon, gain his trust, discover his business secrets, and then, well, that's where things got interesting. I had contacts, people who'd pay serious money for the information he kept so carefully locked away. I'd be rich, powerful, untouchable. I had no idea I was walking straight into my own grave. The night of the ball arrived with that crisp New England October cold that bites through your coat no matter how expensive it is. I'd spent the entire day preparing. Hair, makeup, the works. My dress was custom made, a black gown that hugged every curve just right, designed by someone who understood that elegance is about confidence, not exposure. I looked in the mirror one last time before leaving my apartment, and I barely recognized myself. That's when I knew I was ready. The Fairmont Copley Plaza was transformed into something out of a dark fairy tale. Candlelit corridors, ivy-covered walls, and guests in elaborate masks wandering through like ghosts from different centuries. The air smelled like expensive perfume, champagne, and something I couldn't quite place. Anticipation, maybe. Or danger. Sometimes they smell the same. I walked in, and immediately I felt it. That shift in energy, heads turning. Not everyone's, just the ones who mattered, the ones with power. I moved through the crowd like I owned the place, like I'd been invited to these kinds of events my entire life. Even though 6 months ago, I was still eating ramen in a studio apartment, dreaming of moments exactly like this. "Can I get you something to drink?" A server appeared with a tray of champagne flutes. I took one, smiled, and continued scanning the room for him. Day one. The target. The key to everything I'd planned. And then I saw him, standing near the grand staircase, talking to some older gentleman I recognized from the Forbes list. He wore an all-black tuxedo with a silver mask that covered half his face. And even from across the room, I could feel the gravity of his presence. People orbited around him without even realizing it. He had that kind of power, the natural kind that can't be faked or bought. This was it. This was my moment. I made my way through the crowd, timing my approach perfectly so I'd accidentally bump into him near the champagne bar. I'd practiced this 100 times in my mirror at home. The smile, the laugh, the way I'd touch his arm just long enough to create connection but pull away quick enough to seem uninterested. "Excuse me," I said, our shoulders brushing as I reached for a glass. "Is the champagne any good tonight? Or are they just serving expensive disappointment like usual?" He turned to look at me, and for a moment, I felt something I wasn't expecting. A flutter in my chest. Not part of the plan. I pushed it down. "The champagne's exceptional," he said. His voice deep and smooth, with just a hint of a Korean accent that made my heart skip. Though I'm starting to think the real luxury tonight is the company. Smooth. He was smooth. I liked that. It meant he was used to playing this game, which meant he wouldn't see through me as easily. Is that what they're teaching at billionaire school these days? Classic compliments wrapped in confidence? He laughed, a real laugh, not the fake one most rich guys do. "You got me. I'm Day One, by the way." "I know. I mean, I've heard of you. Everyone's heard of you." "And you are?" "Someone who prefers mystery, at least for now." We talked for the next hour, and I have to admit, I was genuinely enjoying it. He was witty, intelligent, and he actually listened when I spoke, a trait shockingly rare in men with that much money. I told him carefully crafted stories about my life that were true enough to sound real, but vague enough to maintain the mystery. He did the same, and I found myself trying to read between the lines, searching for the secrets I was supposed to uncover. "You know what I like about tonight?" he asked, leading me onto the dance floor. "Everyone's wearing masks. Everyone's pretending to be someone they're not. It's honest, in a weird way, because at least we all admit the facade." "And what if I'm not wearing a facade?" I asked. "What if this is really me?" "Then you're either the most dangerous woman in this room," he said, pulling me closer as the music shifted to something slower, "or the most honest. I haven't decided which yet." That's when I should have realized something was wrong. That's when the alarms should have gone off in my head, but they didn't. Instead, I was caught up in the moment, in the game, in the thrill of what I thought was my manipulation working perfectly. Around midnight, things started to shift. I noticed people whispering, glancing in our direction. Some of the women in the room were looking at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Pity, maybe? Anger? It made me uncomfortable, but I pushed the feeling aside. "Come with me," Daewon said, taking my hand. "There's something I want to show you." He led me away from the main ballroom, down a corridor lined with dark oil paintings and crystal chandeliers. We ended up in what looked like a private lounge, all leather furniture and ambient lighting, the kind of space that screamed old money and older secrets. "I need to tell you something," he said, and something in his tone made my stomach drop. "And I need you to hear me out before you react." Okay, that's never a good way to start a conversation. He took off his mask, and I saw his face clearly for the first time. He was even more handsome without it. which was annoying because it made what was about to happen even more complicated. "You know who I am, So-Yun," he said. "I know about the research you did, the contacts you have, the plan to get close to me, extract information, and sell it to the highest bidder." My blood went cold. My carefully constructed world was crumbling in real time. "I don't know what I started, but he held up a hand. "I've known since the moment you applied for that job at the marketing firm 6 months ago, the one that happened to have a contract with my company. I knew about every step of this plan because I had someone watching you. Not to stop you, but to understand what you wanted, to understand you. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. I was supposed to be the one with all the information, all the power. I was supposed to be playing him." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Why not just have me arrested?" "Because," he said, stepping closer, "I wanted to see if you'd actually go through with it, and more importantly, I wanted to see who you really are underneath all of this." "And what did you find?" I asked, meeting his eyes. "That's the complicated part. Because tonight I realized something. You're ambitious, you're intelligent, you're absolutely ruthless. And under any other circumstances, I would have had security escort you out of this building an hour ago. But you didn't." "No, I didn't. Because I actually liked you tonight. Not the version of you that was trying to manipulate me. The real version. The one that laughs at stupid jokes and asks real questions, and doesn't pretend to know things she doesn't. I didn't know what to say. My entire plan was in ruins, and somehow this man was making me feel like maybe that wasn't the worst thing that could happen." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now, you get to choose. You can leave this room, leave Boston, disappear completely, and I'll make sure your contacts never hear from you again. Or what? Or you stay. You actually talk to me. No games, no plans, no masks. Just two people who've both been pretending their entire lives." It was tempting, dangerously tempting, but something in my gut was telling me this was wrong, that there was something he wasn't telling me, that this was just another layer of the game. "I need to think," I said. "You don't have much time. My wife's going to be looking for me soon, and I'd prefer if she didn't find us alone in here." The words hit me like a physical blow. Wife. He'd said the word so casually, like it was nothing, like he hadn't just shattered everything. "Your wife?" I repeated slowly. "Yes," he said, and for the first time, I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe? That's the part I probably should have mentioned earlier. I heard the door open behind us before I could respond, and when I turned around, I saw her. She was stunning, and I don't mean that in a complimentary way. She was the kind of beauty that comes from generations of money and privilege. Tall, elegant, wearing a deep crimson dress that probably cost more than my car. Her mask was off, and her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and absolutely furious. "Daewon," she said, her voice like silk wrapped around a knife. "I've been looking everywhere for you, and here you are, having a private conversation with this person." That's when I realized something crucial, something that made my blood run even colder than before. This wasn't a setup. This wasn't some game where I was catching him in an affair that could be used for leverage. This was something far more dangerous, because as I looked at his wife's expression, I saw something I recognized. I saw myself, calculating, dangerous, and about 3 steps ahead of everyone in the room. Daewon said, standing up straighter, "This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, I'm sure it isn't. Though I have to say, I'm impressed. You actually found someone ambitious enough to come after my husband. That takes real nerve. Or stupidity. Honestly, I haven't decided which. She extended her hand toward me, and something told me this wasn't a gesture of friendship. "Yurin Huang," she said, "Daewon's wife of 6 years. And you are?" "Se-yeon Kang," I said, shaking her hand and feeling the grip of steel beneath her perfectly manicured nails. "And I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Has there?" she asked, her eyes never leaving mine. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been working very hard to seduce my husband, and I have to tell you, if I wanted to destroy you for it, I absolutely could. Within the hour, you would have nothing. No job, no reputation, no future. I have that kind of power." She wasn't bluffing. I could see it in her eyes. She meant every word. "But I'm not going to do that," she continued, "because I have something much more interesting in mind." Daewon said sharply. "Don't." "Shut up," she said calmly, not even looking at him. "You've done enough damage for one night." She turned back to me, and that's when I saw it. That flash of something in her expression that made me realize this night was about to get infinitely more complicated. "How would you like to make real money, Seon-yoon?" she asked. "Not the pennies your little contacts are going to pay you for information. Real money, the kind that changes your life permanently." "What's the catch?" I asked, because there's always a catch. "The catch," she said, smiling in a way that made my skin crawl, "is that you'd have to work for me instead of against my husband. And the job, well, let's just say it involves a lot more than simple corporate espionage." I looked at Daewon, searching his face for some indication of what was about to happen, but all I saw was resignation, like he had already accepted that this night was spinning out of control. "I'm listening," I said to Yurin, even though every instinct was screaming at me to run. "Good," she said, pulling out her phone, "because I've been running a very specific operation for the past 3 years, and I need someone smart enough to help me. Someone ambitious enough to do what needs to be done. Someone like you." "What kind of operation?" I asked. "The kind that makes my husband's legitimate business look like a lemonade stand," she said. "Now, are you interested or not? Because if you're not, well, I meant what I said about being able to destroy you. And trust me, I'm much better at that than you were ever at seduction." That's when I realized the truth. That's when everything I thought I understood about this night, about these people, about power itself, shifted into focus. I wasn't the hunter. I was never the hunter. I was the prey. And Yurin Huang had been stalking me the entire time. Everything started making sense in reverse. The way Daewon knew about my plan, the way he'd been so welcoming, so understanding. It wasn't because he was naive or because I was so clever. It was because he was waiting for his wife to tell him what to do. He was the puppet, and she was pulling the strings. And now, standing in that private lounge in the Fairmont Copley Plaza, wearing a costume ball mask that had cost me 2 months' salary, I had a choice to make. I could refuse and walk away. I could try to expose them, though who would believe me? I could disappear and hope they didn't decide to make good on Yurin's threats. Or I could accept. I could cross a line I wasn't sure I'd be able to uncross. I could become part of something that, if discovered, would destroy me far more thoroughly than anything I'd ever imagined. "Tell me more," I heard myself say. "What exactly would this job entail?" Yurin's smile widened, and in that moment, I knew I'd made a terrible decision, but I also knew there was no going back now. "First," she said, "you need to understand something fundamental about power. Real power. It's not about money, though money helps. It's not about status, though people respect status. Real power is about information, about leverage, about knowing people's darkest secrets and being willing to use them." She walked around the room as she spoke, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown timer. "For the past 3 years, I've been collecting information on the most powerful people in Boston. CEOs, politicians, judges, even a few people in law enforcement. I have files on affairs, on embezzlement, on crimes that never made it to court, and I use that information to make deals, to ensure that when I need something done, it gets done." "You're blackmailing them," I said, not quite believing what I was hearing. Such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as strategic negotiation, and it's been incredibly lucrative. Day One's legitimate business makes millions. My operation makes tens of millions. The difference is that my operation is completely untraceable and completely deniable. "Exactly," she said, nodding like I'd passed some kind of test. "Which is where you come in. I need someone to help me expand the operation. Someone who understands how to get close to people, how to make them trust you, how to find their weaknesses. You've already demonstrated all of those skills tonight. I'm simply asking you to work for someone who appreciates them." I looked at Day One again, trying to understand how a man who seemed so intelligent, so powerful, could have let himself become so completely subjugated by his wife. "Don't judge him too harshly," Urina said, following my gaze. "He knew what he was getting into when he married me. I was very upfront about my ambitions. He just underestimated how far I was willing to go to achieve them." "And if I say no?" I asked. "Then you leave this room, and within 48 hours, every contact you've ever made is contacted with detailed information about your plan to extract corporate secrets from my husband. Your reputation is destroyed. You're blacklisted from every major marketing firm in New England. You become unemployable in your field. And the people who are going to pay you for information, they're going to be very upset that you're not delivering. The penalties for that kind of failure can be quite severe." She wasn't making threats. She was stating facts. That's what made it so terrifying. "And if I say yes?" I asked. "Then you become very rich. You work for me, helping me expand my operation. You get to use all those skills you've developed, but for something that actually pays. You get protection under my umbrella, which means nobody touches you without my permission. And most importantly, you get to experience real power. The kind that comes from knowing things other people don't. The kind that makes people afraid of you." She extended her hand again, and this time I understood what she was really offering. Not just a job, a transformation, a path to becoming someone like her, someone untouchable, someone feared, someone in true control. I thought about my life up until that point. The small apartment, the barely there salary, the dreams that seemed further away every single day. I thought about the moment I decided to come to this ball, the moment I decided to try to manipulate Day One. I thought about how far I was already willing to go for power. And then I thought about the vendor in the boutique shop in Beacon Hill, the one who'd warned me about the masks changing people's lives. I took Urin's hand. "When do I start?" I asked. Her smile was absolutely predatory. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. There's an office building in Cambridge I want you to meet me at. You'll bring nothing with you. You'll tell nobody about this conversation, and you'll understand that from this moment forward, your life as you knew it is over." "Who was I before?" I asked quietly. "Someone ordinary, someone with potential that nobody recognized. Tomorrow, you become someone extraordinary, someone that people will remember." She gave me an address and a time, then left the room without another word. Day One looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sympathy, maybe? Or a warning. "You should know that nobody who's ever worked for my wife has been able to leave, not because she doesn't let them, but because they don't want to. She has a way of making you believe that what you're doing is justified, that everyone you're hurting deserves it, that you're not a criminal. You're just someone who understood the rules of the game before everyone else did." "Are you warning me?" I asked. "No," he said. "I'm telling you that you should run, right now. Leave Boston, change your name, do whatever it takes to get as far away from Urine as you possibly can. Because she doesn't just destroy people's lives, Seon, she destroys their souls. And once that happens, you can never really come back from it. But I didn't run. I didn't leave Boston. I didn't change my name. Instead, I went back to my apartment that night and lay awake until dawn, thinking about everything that had transpired. By the time the sun came up, I'd made my decision. I was going to show up to that meeting. I was going to work for Yurin. I was going to become the person she saw in me, the person I'd always wanted to be. I didn't know then that the worst part of my journey was just beginning, that the skills I would learn, the things I would do, the lines I would cross, they would haunt me forever. That years later, I'd be sitting alone in a dark apartment, wondering who I'd become, and whether I could ever go back to being the person I used to be. I didn't know any of that. I only knew that I wanted power, and I was willing to do anything to get it. The next morning, I showed up at that office building in Cambridge exactly at 9 a.m. Yurin was waiting for me in a corner office on the 15th floor, sitting behind an enormous mahogany desk like she owned the world. Maybe she did. By that point, I wouldn't have been surprised. "Good," she said when I walked in. "You came." I was 50-50 on whether you'd actually show up. That says something about your character. You're either very brave or very stupid. I'm hoping it's the former, because stupid I can't use. "What do you need me to do?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. "First," she said, "I need you to meet my team. They're the people who help me run this operation. Each one of them has their own specialty. You'll be working alongside them, learning from them, eventually becoming an irreplaceable part of what we do." She pressed a button on her desk and a door opened that I hadn't even noticed was there. 3 people walked through, 2 men and a woman. They looked dangerous in a way that money usually tries to hide, but these people weren't trying to hide anything. "This is Jinho," Yurin said, gesturing to the older of the 2 men. He looked to be in his late 50s, with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen things most people never would. "He handles our security, everything from digital surveillance to physical protection. If you need to know where someone is, what they're doing, or how to make sure they stay quiet, Jinho's your man." Jinho nodded at me, and I saw his eyes scan my face like he was filing away information for later use. "This is Min Jun," Yurin continued, "our financial director. He makes sure that money moves in and out of our various accounts without leaving any traces. He's a genius with cryptocurrency, shell corporations, and ways to hide money that I didn't even know existed before I met him." Minjin was younger, maybe mid-40s, with the kind of cold, calculating expression that suggested he'd spent so long dealing with numbers that he'd forgotten how to deal with people. "And this is Dr. Hei Wan," Yurin said, gesturing to the woman. "She's a psychologist who specializes in manipulation, persuasion, and behavioral analysis. She helps us understand what makes people tick, what their vulnerabilities are, and how to exploit those vulnerabilities." Dr. Heywan was striking. Tall, with sharp features and intelligent eyes that seemed to look right through you. When she smiled at me, I felt a chill run down my spine. "Welcome to the team," she said, her voice smooth and measured. "Yurin's told us about your particular skill set. We think you'll fit in very well here." "What exactly is this operation?" I asked, looking at all of them. Yurin mentioned blackmail, but there has to be more than that. "Much more," Yurin said, gesturing for me to sit down. "We don't just collect information on people. We actively create scenarios where we can collect that information. We identify targets, we study them, we create situations that will expose their deepest secrets. And then, when they're most vulnerable, we approach them with what we know. You manipulate them." We create opportunities for them to be manipulated, she corrected. Most people want to do bad things. They just need the right circumstances and the right person to make it seem acceptable. We provide both. Over the next few hours, Urine walked me through the structure of her operation, the targets they went after, the methods they used, the payoff structure. Everything was meticulously organized, almost like a legitimate business, except the business was extracting secrets from Boston's most powerful people and using those secrets as currency. Your first assignment, Urine said, as the day was winding down, is going to be relatively simple. I want you to get close to Senator Marcus Holloway. He's up for re-election next year, and he's been expressing interest in a bill that would severely impact one of my client's businesses. My client is willing to pay a significant amount of money to ensure that the senator either votes against that bill or withdraws his support entirely. How am I supposed to do that? I asked. That's the easy part, Dr. Haywan said, pulling up a file on her computer. The senator is having an affair with a woman named Jessica Reeves, who works at a law firm in downtown Boston. She's 28 years old, ambitious, and looking for someone to take her seriously. You're going to become that person. She clicked through several photos, pictures of the senator with this woman, leaving hotels, going into restaurants, all of it carefully documented. We've already set things in motion, Dr. Haywan continued. Jessica's current boyfriend just broke up with her yesterday. She's vulnerable, lonely. Perfect. You're going to become her close friend. You'll comfort her through her breakup, you'll be there for her when she needs someone, and gradually you'll introduce her to a new man, someone we've had training for months, specifically for this role. Why not just approach the senator directly? I asked. Because direct approach doesn't work with people like him. He's too careful, too practiced at dealing with pressure. But through Jessica, through an emotional connection to someone he cares about, we can make him do almost anything. We can make him believe he's protecting her. We can make him believe that his vote is what's saving their relationship. It's brilliant, actually, Minjun added. From his perspective, he's making a decision based on his own principles. He doesn't realize he's been manipulated because the manipulation is so subtle, so deeply embedded in his emotional connections that he can't see the strings. I felt sick listening to them explain it, but I also felt fascinated. They were right. It was the most perfectly orchestrated manipulation I'd ever heard of, and they wanted me to help execute it. When do I start? I asked. Tomorrow, Urine said. We'll give you all of Jessica's information, where she works, where she lives, her schedule, her habits. You'll accidentally bump into her at a coffee shop she frequents. You'll strike up a conversation. You'll be exactly what she needs right now, a new friend who seems to understand her. And then, I asked, though I already knew the answer, and then you bring her closer and closer to the man we've prepared for her until she can't imagine her life without him. And once she's emotionally attached, we activate the next phase of the plan. I said yes. Of course I said yes, because by that point, I was already in too deep. And more importantly, I was starting to believe what Daewon had warned me about, that this kind of power, once you got a taste of it, became intoxicating. The next 3 months were a blur of manipulation, lies, and the slow erosion of my moral compass. I made friends with Jessica. I listened to her talk about her heartbreak. I introduced her to the man Urine's team had trained, a charming, successful businessman named Richard, who seemed like he'd been created specifically to be her ideal partner. And as Richard and Jessica got closer, as their relationship deepened, I got regular updates from Dr. Haywan about how everything was progressing exactly according to plan. I've been cooperating with the FBI for the past 6 months, he continued. I've been wearing a wire. I've been recording conversations. I've been helping them build the case against all of you. Why? Urine asked, and I could see the moment she realized the answer, the moment she understood that her husband had betrayed her completely. Because I couldn't watch this anymore, Day One said, looking directly at me. I couldn't watch you destroy people's lives. I couldn't watch her destroy you, Seon. Because that's what was happening. You came to this operation ambitious and morally flexible, but you weren't evil. And I was watching Urine systematize the evil out of you, turn it into something natural, something normal. How touching, Urine said coldly, but ultimately pointless. I have lawyers who will make this go away. I have contacts in the federal system who will ensure— No, you don't, Day One interrupted, because I've also been recording your communications with those contacts. I've been documenting every bribe, every attempt to influence the investigation. You're done, Urine. We're all done. That's when the apartment erupted into controlled chaos. FBI agents appeared in the doorway, reading us our rights, telling us to stand up slowly, with our hands where they could see them. I remember feeling oddly calm as they were cuffing me. I remember thinking that maybe this was exactly what I deserved, that maybe this was the universe's way of balancing the scales for everything I'd done. But mostly, I remember looking at Day One's face as they led me out, seeing the sadness there, seeing that he was right. I'd let Urine destroy my soul, and I didn't even realize it was happening until it was too late. The trial was a media circus. Every major news outlet in New England covered it. Blackmail ring exposed, the headline screamed. Boston elite brought down by one woman's ambition, they declared, and I was that woman. The press painted me as either a victim who'd been manipulated or a villain who orchestrated the whole scheme, depending on which outlet you were reading. Urine had the best lawyers money could buy, and she used every legal trick in the book to try to get a plea deal. But Day One's recordings were airtight. His testimony was devastating. He documented everything, every conversation, every instruction, every victim. In the end, Urine was sentenced to 15 years. Jinho got 12. Minjun surprisingly turned state evidence early and got off with just 3 years and a substantial fine. Dr. Haewon disappeared the day before her arrest was supposed to happen. They still haven't found her. And me? I got 8 years, with the understanding that my cooperation with the federal authorities might result in a reduced sentence. I took the deal. 3 years later, I'm sitting in a federal prison in upstate New York, and I have a lot of time to think about that Halloween night. I think about how it all started with a mask, with a lie, with the belief that I could control my destiny if I was just smart enough, ambitious enough, ruthless enough. I think about Jessica, the woman I befriended and manipulated. She figured out eventually that Richard was working against her. She never recovered from that betrayal. Last I heard, she'd moved out of Boston and was trying to rebuild her life somewhere nobody knew her. I think about the senator and the judge and the real estate developer. All the people I helped destroy for money I'll never spend. I think about Day One sitting in witness protection somewhere, having traded his marriage and his freedom for a clear conscience.
She's completely attached now, Dr. Haewon reported one day in mid-January. She's talking about moving in together. He's already suggested they start talking about marriage. By the time the senator finds out about Richard's true intentions, Jessica will be too emotionally invested to hear anything negative about him. And the senator? I asked. He's been presented with the information, Urine said. We made sure he understood that Jessica's new boyfriend has significant business interests that depend on his vote. We made sure he understood what happens if those interests aren't protected. We didn't need to be explicit about it. He's intelligent enough to read between the lines. How did he react? I asked. Exactly how we predicted, Urine said. He's going to change his vote. He's convinced himself it's the right thing to do. He's told himself that the senator's daughter's boyfriend, that's the connection we established, has given him new information about the bill that he didn't have before. He's convinced himself that his change in position is based on this new information and has nothing to do with the fact that we are essentially blackmailing him. I felt a flutter of something in my chest, something like guilt mixed with excitement. We'd done it. We'd manipulated one of Massachusetts' most powerful politicians into changing a vote that would affect thousands of people, and I'd been part of it. "You did well," Yurin said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Better than I expected, actually. I think you might be ready for something bigger." That's when things started to get really dark. Over the next year, I became integral to Yurin's operation. I targeted a Boston judge, got close to his assistant, and extracted enough information about his corruption to essentially own him. I befriended the wife of a real estate developer, discovered her husband was embezzling from their company, and used that information to ensure one of Yurin's clients got a massive development contract at a fraction of its market value. I lied constantly. I violated people's privacy. I destroyed relationships for profit. And with each assignment, it became easier. Each time I did it, the guilt faded a little more. I started thinking like Yurin. These people were powerful, which meant they'd probably done something wrong. I was just finding out what. It was a convenient fiction, and I didn't allow myself to examine it too closely. By the time I'd been working with Yurin for nearly a year, I'd accumulated enough knowledge about the operation that she started treating me like an equal. I was no longer the recruit. I was becoming the strategist. I was the one suggesting new targets, new methods, new ways to expand the empire. And then one Tuesday afternoon in October, exactly a year after the masquerade ball, everything fell apart. I was in Yurin's office when Jin Ho walked in with an expression I'd never seen before: fear. The head of their security team looked genuinely afraid. "We have a problem," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "The FBI has been building a case against us. They have recordings, they have financial documents. They know about at least 15 separate blackmail operations we've run in the past year." The room went silent. "How much do they have?" Yurin asked, her voice steady, but her hands trembling slightly. "Enough to arrest all of us, enough to put us away for a very long time. The question is how they got it." That's when I realized something that made my blood run cold. "It was me," Daewon said from the doorway. We all turned to look at him. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. And I think about Yurin, somewhere in a maximum security facility, probably already plotting her next move. Probably already finding ways to run her operation from inside a prison cell. Because that's who she is. That's what she does. The mask vendor in Beacon Hill still runs his shop, or so I've heard. Sometimes I wonder if he's helped anyone else choose a mask that changed their life. I wonder if he knew, when he warned me that every mask changes someone, that I was about to change myself far more dramatically than I could have imagined. People ask me sometimes, in letters or through visitation, whether I regret it, whether I wish I could go back and make different choices. Honestly, I'm not sure regret is the right word for what I feel. I chose this. Every step of the way, I chose it. I chose to go to that ball. I chose to approach Daewon. I chose to accept Yurin's offer when I could have walked away. I chose to become someone who would destroy other people's lives for money and power. The mask didn't make me do it. Nobody held a gun to my head. I did it because somewhere deep inside, I already was that person. The mask just gave me permission to become her. And now, sitting in this cell, I have the one thing I never had before: time. Time to really think about who I am. Time to examine the choices I made. Time to figure out if there's any possibility of redemption for someone like me. The truth is, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully reconcile the person I was before the masquerade ball with the person I became. I don't know if the damage I did to other people can ever be repaired. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look in a mirror and see someone I recognize. But I know one thing for certain. That Halloween night wasn't the beginning of my transformation. It was just the moment when I finally stopped pretending I was someone different than I actually was. Sometimes power shows us the truth about ourselves. And sometimes that truth is far uglier than we ever wanted to admit. As I finish writing this account of what happened, years later, sitting in a prison cell, knowing that one day I'll be released and have to figure out who I'm going to be in the world, I realized something important. The story isn't really about how I tried to seduce a CEO at a masquerade ball. It's not really about a brilliant woman orchestrating blackmail schemes. It's not really about an FBI investigation or a dramatic arrest. The story is about how easy it is to lose yourself, how quickly ambition can become obsession, how the person you think you are and the person you actually become can be two completely different people, how one choice made in a moment of temptation can unravel everything you built. It's about how we all wear masks every single day. Masks of respectability, masks of morality, masks of being better than we actually are. And what happens when someone gives us permission to take that mask off, to finally be the person we've always wanted to be, even if that person is fundamentally broken? Day one tried to warn me. He said that urine had a way of making you believe that what you're doing is justified, that you're not a criminal, you're just someone who understood the rules of the game before everyone else did. He was right. She did have that power, and I fell for it completely. Looking back now, I can see all the moments where I could have made different choices, all the moments where I could have walked away, but I didn't, because deep down, I didn't want to. Walking away would have meant admitting that I was just ordinary, that I didn't have what it takes to play in Urine's world, that I wasn't as special or as ambitious or as ruthless as I wanted to believe I was. So I didn't walk away. I dove deeper. And in doing so, I destroyed not just the lives of the people we targeted, but my own life as well. People often ask me what I would do differently if I could go back, if I could stand in that boutique shop in Beacon Hill and choose not to buy that Venetian gold mask, if I could skip the masquerade ball entirely, if I could make different choices. Honestly, I don't know. Because I'm not sure I'm the kind of person who could make different choices. I'm not sure that Seon Kang, the version of me that existed before that ball, would have been any different if given the same opportunity. We like to think that we're good people, that we'd make the right choice when faced with temptation. But the truth is, most of us don't know until we're actually faced with that choice. And by that point, it's usually too late. The last thing I'll say is this. If there's anyone out there who reads this and sees themselves in me, if there's anyone who feels that same hunger for power, that same willingness to cross ethical lines if it means getting what they want, that same ability to justify the unjustifiable, my advice is simple. Walk away, right now, while you still can. Don't wait until you're too in deep. Don't wait until you've destroyed too many lives, including your own. Don't wait until the only person you can blame is yourself, and you finally have to face the truth about who you really are. Because once you've taken that mask off, once you've seen who you actually are underneath all the pretense and the justification and the rationalization, you can never put it back on. You can never unsee that truth, and you'll spend the rest of your life trying to figure out if there's any way to become someone different than the person you've become. That's my story. That's what happened when an ambitious woman wore a mask to a Halloween masquerade ball and discovered that she was much more dangerous and much more damaged than she ever realized. And if you think my experience is unique, that the same thing couldn't happen to you, think again. Because this isn't really a story about a specific person or a specific crime. It's a story about how the desire for power can corrupt anyone, given the right circumstances and the right temptation. It's a story about masks in every sense of the word. The literal mask that changed my life, the metaphorical masks we all wear to hide our true selves, the masks we use to justify doing things we know are wrong. And it's a story about what happens when someone finally takes that mask off and sees their true reflection in the mirror. What I discovered that night, what I'm still discovering years later, is that sometimes the scariest thing isn't the person staring back at you from the reflection. It's the knowledge that you put that person there. You created them. You allowed them to exist. And now you have to figure out whether you can ever make them stop.